Hey everybody, this is Steven from PopCultureMaven.com. We're back with this week's new comic book reviews, and just when you thought it was safe to go back to the comic shop, it's a big one, kids. It's a big week. Plus, there's two graphic novels, one that came out this week and one that came out a few weeks ago, but I just didn't really have a chance to review it. So we're going to hit them both up. So we'll try to get through it. One of them's going to be a little long. The long one's going to be the first one. Deadman Tells the Spooky Tales graphic novel, DC Kids graphic novel. So all the stories are written by Franco. So the artwork is Dire Warning by Sarah Richards. The House of Madame Pica is Andy Price. Eyes by Derek Charm. Litterbox by Mike Hartigan. Neighborhood Cats by Christopher Uminga. The Cemetery by Abigail Larson. Fall by Morgan Beam. Boy in His Skull, Justin Casadendia, sorry. Then we have The Fisherman, Teresa Bowling, Mannequins, Boatwright Artwork. On the inside, Scott McMahon. The Fly is drawn by Franco. Inattentive Blindness, Isaac Goodhart. And the final story is The Box, Angus Gorbaska. So what this is so these are it's their kids line. So I wouldn't say that they're definitely age appropriate. It's definitely in all ages. They were all good. I don't think there were the one so Sarah Richards. So what it is she actually draws all the Deadman interludes. So Deadman's it's kind of like Twilight Zone like where Deadman hosts each story. So in between each story, he kind of gives he goes, oh, that last story was great. This one's going to be this, blah, blah, blah. So Sarah Richards does all that artwork throughout. And then each one. So the first one, The House of Madame Pica, is it's a haunted house story. They go to clean out this old house, and then the one girl stays, and of course it's haunted. And it does not go well. The next one is Eyes, which is interesting because it's Derek Charm, who I'm a really big fan of his artwork, and it's more of it's a humor story, but then it has a neat little horror twist at the end. Then we have the Litter Box, which is basically it's almost like a comic strip where a cat goes into the litter box and then a ghost forms from the fumes of the cat poo and tries to scare the cat, and it doesn't go well because cats don't care. Then the next story, I must say that Umiga's artwork on that is really, really cute. It's really cute. And I'm sorry, that's Hartigan does that artwork. Umiga does the Neighborhood Cats, which is basically it's a fully silent story, but it's really good. And of course, the artwork really nails it on that one with the cats. Think of The Birds, but with cats. Probably kind of the creepiest one is The Cemetery, which is drawn by Larson. That one's actually really the kind of the meatiest, I think, of the stories. And it really has quite a surprise twist to it for the ending. I really like that one a lot. The Fall, which is drawn by Beam, is actually really an interesting story because it's one of those that has that twist at the end, and it's so the kids are playing, and they're playing in some leaves, and then the leaves turns into a monster, and it's quite a wild story, and I really like the artwork on that one. Probably the kind of oddest one, but it's really good, is a Boy in His Skull. It's basically this kid who has a skull is like a toy, and he gets picked on, and then of course the skull basically is like gets revenge against the bullies. That one's really interesting. The Fisherman is drawn by Bowling. That one's is kind of what. So what it is there was a boating accident, and some people died, some people lived, and then the fisherman comes back, and these kids notice him, and it's kind of like, yeah, it's a fisherman, but it's not what you think. Then the Boatwright artwork on mannequins is really creepy. Basically, the mom takes these girls to go get clothing. They discover the mannequins all have these glowing eyes, and the mannequins are basically maybe people that have shopped there before. So that one's an interesting story. On the inside is probably it's the only story that actually has a DC character in it. It's basically a Man-Bat story. So I really like that one. Scott McMahon's artwork on that's really, really nice. I really like that one. The Fly is just it's a two-page strip. It's kind of cute. Basically it's the Spider and the Fly story. And then the Inattentive Blindness, drawn by Goodhart, is basically these kids go to a theater, and the usher, the guy who checks them in at the box office says, make sure you watch the movie. And the one kid doesn't watch the movie, and it's almost like if you're not paying attention, bad things will happen. And then the final story drawn by Garbowski is like a monster under the bed type story that has a really great twist to it. They're all, like I said, they're all really fun stories. Some of them are like, once again, very short and everything. Like the Fly is actually the shortest. It's only 2 pages. They're all really good stories. I like the fact that the artwork on all the artwork is really, really fantastic. There was none of the artwork that I didn't like. And once again, some stories had more meat on the bones, just because, like I said, I think the Cemetery's probably the one that really has the deepest story going. But that's not saying that the other ones don't. They all, like I said, were very strong stories, and I also like the fact that they varied in size, so it gave you a really nice variety. I'm a really huge fan of like the DC young adult and kids books, and this is really another winner for that. So I really, really highly recommend this, not only for kids, but anybody. Like I said, I enjoyed all the stories, even though they're obviously intended as a younger audience. And plus, with Halloween coming up, this is a perfect book for the season. I think it's perfect for any time of the year, but especially for Halloween, it's really good. So definitely, that's one of my big picks of the week. I really love that book. Next up, we have Fantastic Four: Full Circle, written and drawn by Alex Ross. So what this is an original graphic novel drawn by Alex Ross, but not in his normal kind of realistic style. And the reason for that is because it's a take on 1966 Stan Lee Jack Kirby story in Fantastic Four called This Man, This Monster, where it harkens back as kind of the setup for this, where there was a character, Ricardo Jones, who imitated the Thing, and he used this machine to make himself look like the Thing. And so him and Reed Richards go into the negative zone, and then Ricardo actually saves Mr. Fantastic, and he stays trapped in the negative zone. And so what it is Ben gets up to make a sandwich, and there's this kind of ghost thing that appears, and it's Ricardo, but then it's not really him. It's like a husk, and then there's these monsters or kind of alien creatures that come out of him. So they kill all of them. Then they decide to go into the negative zone to find out why this is happening, and of course Annihilus is there. But really, it's then they end up going to a planet that's like the negative zone, but then there's this planet that's like a mirror image of Earth, but it's like a positive Earth, like so it's not negative. And it's really, there's a lot of stuff I'm kind of skipping over but basically what really is interesting is the reason that Alex Ross did the artwork in more of a kind of comic book style instead of that realistic painted look is, one, because this is definitely an homage to, especially in the art, to Jack Kirby. It's very Kirby in a lot of respects, and also it has, well, there's two things. One, Kirby also, when he did the Negative Zone, he actually took photos and then put artwork on top of that. And so Alex Ross did the same thing here. So it's kind of a, it's like a black and white photograph with artwork on top of it. Plus he also taps into that pop art, the black light posters, and a lot of that is especially in the coloring, that was around in the 60s, because that was a big thing that Marvel did, those posters that were, for black light posters. So that's really why he decided to do the artwork the way it is. And also, if it was more realistic, it certainly wouldn't have worked in the story that he presented. The nice thing about this, and the really amazing thing, is this is like the best Fantastic Four story I've read in a long time. Now, obviously, when you're doing a self-contained graphic novel like this, you really have a lot of leeway of what you can actually do and how you tell the story. So that's not knocking people that have been doing Fantastic Four, but this is really an amazing story. The artwork's really amazing. Plus the size of the book really helps show off the artwork, because it's really it's nice. Now this is the regular hardcover. There's a slipcase, but just to let you know, the slipcase is the same book inside. It's not any different. It's the same hardcover. There's the slipcase, and it comes with a poster. So that one is more expensive. I think that one's already out of print, but like I said, really, it's a lot of bang for your buck on this one. It's a really good deal, and like I said, the slipcase is nice, but it's certainly not necessary. Okay, so now with the original graphic novels, we got those out of the way. We'll start with the regular books. First up is DC's Horror Presents Sergeant Rock versus the Army of Dead, written by Bruce Campbell with artwork by Eduardo Risso. First and foremost, yes, it's that Bruce Campbell. Yes, Ash is writing a comic book. And who better to write a comic book about zombies than Bruce Campbell? And I really have to say, the story is really quite interesting. It's really simple, and that's, it's, first of all, there's very few war comics anymore, so that for me is a nice treat. And of course, you have Sergeant Rock. It's set in World War II. There's Nazis. Who doesn't like Nazis getting beat up? Well, it's a problem because Hitler has been brought. This is like post his death. There's a German scientist who brings him back to life and discovers that one way to win the war is to bring back the dead, because they can't be killed as easily the second time. And so the first issues are all set up. So they discover that the zombies are attacking, and so they pull Sergeant Rock and his company to give them these new tools like night vision goggles, and things like that. Different like new technology. And then they capture one of the zombies, and of course it breaks out, and then all of Easy Company just goes after him and everything. And so that's really, this whole first issue setup. But once again, the Campbell's pacing is really good on this story. I really like it. I also like the fact that he's kind of keeping it pretty simple. It's the structure is basic. It's a zombie story. But I think once again he has a good grasp of Sergeant Rock. That's important. And and the other thing, it's just damn fun. That's really the big thing. Then on top of that, Risso's artwork is really, really just perfect. He's the perfect artist for this. He has a nice gritty style and everything, but he also is able to capture, like, there's kind of humorous parts and everything. Especially with the heat vision goggles. There's a great joke there. I won't ruin it. But he visually captures it really well. And it's really a fun book. I was really excited about it, and it exceeded my expectations. So this one's really good. Definitely check it out. This one was really good. Next up, we have Briar Number One, written by Christopher Cantwell, with artwork by German Garcia. So this is a story of Briar Rose, aka Sleeping Beauty, for those who didn't pay attention in fairy tale class. So what it is, it's the classic story of Sleeping Beauty. You know, it starts off her and and the fairy godmothers and stuff like that, not Disney looking, just that would be copyright problem. But the story is public domain. So she pricks her finger, she falls asleep. So when Prince Charming comes, here's the twist of the story. He marries her, but does not wake her up. Because he's like, well, wait a second. If I don't wake her up, I can just rule the kingdom, be rich. It'll be great. So we discover that Prince Charming is an asshole in this story. So what it is 100 years later, she gets woken up. And so she's basically she's kind of deteriorated. But when she wakes up, because it's a magic spell, she slowly comes back to life. And then what happens is, she's trying to figure out what's going on. She goes back to the castle. It's in ruins. And so she goes to this tavern, and and then people are, they're hitting on her because, there's a pretty girl. Oh, she's a princess. And so she ends up getting captured with this other person. I don't want to say alien, just another species. And so they travel across the desert, and then the guys who kidnapped them get attacked, and so they escape and everything, and they're like cannibals, so they eat the guys, but she's skin and bone because the other woman just says, oh well, they don't like me because I taste weird, and you're just skin and bone, so you're not even worth killing. And so they come across, they travel across the desert. They come across this guy who knows the myth of her, but he like kills himself. So like she's like, it's really weird. Like it ends a little oddly for the first issue, but it's an interesting take on a fairy tale story. I did like that. Now, I'll be honest, Christopher Cantwell is not necessarily, been my favorite writer. I don't think he's a terrible writer by any stretch, but a lot of his stuff have not kind of hit me the right way. But I have to say, I really did enjoy this first issue. I think it's off to a good start. Garcia's artwork is really, really nice. It's especially the beginning with the very fairy tale look, and then it goes into more of a, I don't want to say realistic style, but it's just a more traditional style instead of like a fairy tale looking like storybook look. And like I said, the artwork's really good. So I think it's off to an interesting start. It's something. There's definitely enough interest to keep going, at least to the second issue on this. I did like this issue. I think it's definitely worth checking out. Next up, we have Batman: The Audio Adventures #1, written by Dennis McNichols, with pencils by Anthony Marquez and inker Jay Bone. So this is, I believe, this is a kind of a companion type. Comic. HBO Max is actually doing it's like an rolled radio show, and I guess you can look at it. You can get the podcast. I believe it's for free. I have not listened to the podcast, so I kind of went into this just the comic. So the interesting thing is, it really reminds me a lot of Batman the Animated Adventure comic that DC did quite a few years ago when the Batman animated series was on originally. And so it's just kind of like, so we're introduced, we kind of get the origin of Harley and stuff. It's really, the only thing that was kind of odd about it was kind of like there were like 3 stories going on, but it was like in chunks. So I don't know. That was a little odd. Then it goes to like, there's a Killer Croc story, but it once again, it doesn't really end. It just kind of, it's a setup. And then there's the third where there's the Demon Brood is looking for the king of the scimitars, of swords. and they basically hired Batman to find him. And so that's really what it is. I really did like the artwork, because one, it really has like a Batman the Animated Series feel to the artwork. I really like that, and I think Marquez's night, his penciling is really good, but I could tell that Jay Bone, because of his work, it really has a nice, clean style to it. It like I said, definitely looks like the animated series. The story was like, it was okay. It was, like I said, a little disjointed. I think kind of the problem was, I see that he's kind of setting things up, but it's like, okay, here's this Killer Croc thing, but what does it have to do with the other thing? And that is kind of the question. I certainly don't think it's bad. I think we'll kind of see what the second issue brings. I will say it's a good all ages book, in the sense of, it's very cartoony in that respect. So, but we'll kind of have to wait and see. I liked elements of this book, but I wasn't overwhelmed with this first issue. Next up, we have Old Dog Number One, written and drawn by Declan Shelvey. So what it is you have there's Jack Lynch is a CIA agent, but he's an older CIA agent, and he's kind of on his, he's being kind of scooted out, so he's on this stakeout. And the CIA just doesn't really want him anymore, and so he goes on this mission. They're supposed to be watching, they're doing a stakeout, and so the two guys see something. They go in, and he doesn't hear from them. So he goes in. One of them's been killed. One of them's almost dead. And so he kind of follows the trail, and there's like this machine, and there's this guy. He gets shot but not killed, and he shoots the machine. It explodes, and then what it is he wakes up years later, and so there's like this new. It's not the CIA. It's like a black ops type thing, where they want him to work on the case of this machine or whatever. There's some machine that they say that there's another country, I don't know if it was Russia, but like a Russia, that is farther ahead on it. So and since he kind of like has been affected by this machine, they want him to kind of join their organization. Now, he also has a partner. There's this girl that shows up, and I will not spoil it, but there's a nice little twist with his partner at the end. So there's kind of a couple things going on that is really intriguing. This first issue was good. It's a setup issue, so it's a solid setup, but it's kind of like, okay, I think we'll really get to see in the second issue where Shavely is going to go with this. I think once again, it's a setup. It's a first issue. It's not a bad thing. But it's more of exposition with this first issue. But I did like the setup, and I think it shows a lot of promise. So it's worth checking out. Next up, we have Superman Space Race number 2, written by Mark Russell with artwork by Michael Allred. So I really loved the first issue. And I commented on the first issue being that this in a lot of ways really reminds me of Darwin Cook's New Frontier, in the sense of he's setting Russell is setting these stories in realistic times. Like this issue takes place it starts in 1972. So he forms the story around real life events. So there's Watergate that is happening, and it's Lois Lane that breaks the Watergate story. But he also kind of jumps ahead, and he adds other things that weren't necessarily of that period, like Brainiac coming to Earth. And the reason he's coming to Earth is because the Anti-Monitor is destroying planets, a la Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now that, of course, doesn't happen until the 80s. That's when that happens. But Russell's kind of put that into this story. He's also put Maxwell Lord into the story, because Bruce Wayne is become Batman, so he's not really running Wayne Enterprises. So they basically put Maxwell Lord in charge, and of course with that it doesn't turn out well. It'll be interesting to see if Lord comes back in the next issue. But so what this issue centers on Superman is that it's kind of like he's still new to like Earth, and people are not sure, like, Lois interviews him, and it's like, well, what, he's like, well, I just saved Earth from an asteroid, and she's like, well, that's great, but why don't you end world hunger? Why don't you save cats out of trees? And so he kind of questions, like, he knows a superhero, but he also is questioning, like, is he doing enough? Which is really an interesting kind of take on Superman in the comics. The other thing that's really interesting is the Justice League is really very new. So once again, Russell's kind of playing fast and loose, but in a very good way with continuity, in the sense of he's using bits and pieces of continuity and real life reality timelines to really mash up the story. But that's what's really making it interesting. And like I said, it has that new frontier quality where it's really, it's like using comics mythology to create a new mythology, or a more like an Elseworlds type mythology, which is really wonderful. I mean, I really, as you know, with many of my reviews, I'm a huge fan of Mark Russell, and this is really just really good, because he puts in, there's his usual, he's really good at social commentary, and he puts that in there, but it's really grounded in a comic story. Once again, the reality part of, like, say, the Watergate and stuff like that, but he's using it to really fit into his Superman story that he's telling. And the other thing that's kind of interesting, it's really becoming, it is a Superman story, but I like the fact that he's really using the rest of the Justice League. There's a great joke with the Flash and bombs, which I will not give away, but there's one page that's absolutely just freaking hilarious. But this really is wonderful. And then, so you have all that. Then you have Michael Allred's artwork, and he is just, I'm a huge fan of Michael Allred, and he's just really just banging this one. He's firing this one on all cylinders. This is a great looking book, and he really is able to capture all of the things that Russell is doing in the script. And especially there's a lot of times where there's just dialogue, like when Lois is interviewing Superman, and it's just, Allred gives it really, he brings it to life, and that's very difficult to do, especially with dialogue, and you've got to have a really great artist, and Michael Allred's one of the best. So this continues to be not only a must-read book, but this is a must-buy book. This is really a highest recommendation. It's really wonderful book. Next up, we have Damage Control number 2, written by Adam F. Goldberg with and Hans Radionoff, with artwork by Will Robson. So Gus is not working out well in his first assignment as in the mailroom at Damage Control, so they decide to send him to Consumer Affairs. And so what Consumer Affairs is, it's basically like FEMA for superhero disasters. So like if they come in and they destroy the building, and people, or somebody's house gets destroyed, the Consumer Affairs says, okay, yeah, we'll pay for your house, we'll pay for everything in it, blah blah blah. So what he has to do is he has to weed out the people that make up stories, and a lot of people make up stories because it's like free money. And so Gus is like, he falls for all these like stories, because this cat lady brings in her cat, and she's like, no, it's an alien, it ate my husband, and but I love it, and you find out that's a bull crap story. There's another guy who's just this basically this fat guy who's lazy, but he's fat and lazy because a symbiote took control and made him play video games and eat, and he quit his job because he was playing video games all day. So Gus believes all this. So the manager's like, I told you to really listen, weed out the stories. And and the other thing that's really great is the Punisher is the crowd control for this division. So he makes sure everybody stays in line. Apparently he did something and he owes Damage Control a favor. That's why he's doing that. And then after he gets talked to by his manager, somebody comes in and says, my family was shrunk by Ant-Man inadvertently because they were fighting and they got caught in the crossfire. And so Gus is like, he smashed the box, doesn't believe him, and the guy starts freaking out because he thinks his family's dead, and then Ant-Man has to come and bring him back. It's really fun. Of course, Adam F. Goldberg is the creator of the Goldbergs, the television show, and he really captures in a different way. Damage Control was created by Dwayne McDuffie, and the basic structure of it is there, but Goldberg has kind of taken that and really run with it, which is really great because McDuffie came up with a really great idea. It's really a great concept, and Goldberg, it still keeps that. The concept is still there. He's just taken it really. What he's done here is he's focused on Gus, and so it allows him to kind of tell these stories about these different departments instead of just like, oh, this is what Damage Control does. It does talk about that, but it also gives kind of a deeper thing about each one. So it's really a fun book. I'm really enjoying it. It's once again, it's silly fun. It's not deep. I like how he uses the heroes and villains as he did in the first issue. But having Punishers like doing crowd control is priceless. It's a fun book. I think it's worth checking out. I'm enjoying it. So we'll kind of see where Gus ends up in assignment in the next issue. Next up we have Flawed number 1, written by Chuck Brown with artwork by Prenzy. So it's there's a city of Stetham, which is it's a very pretty city, but it's kind of one of those where the rich, run the city, the rich, the mob, they pay off. So it's really the people, the actual regular people that live there. It's a really tough town. And so what it is there's this killer who's going around killing young black girls and skinning them, and that's horrible. So it starts off with this lady who comes to Jem, the psychiatrist, and her daughter was killed, and she's like, I saw the news, they were talking about the story, but the police aren't doing anything about it, and Jem tells her, don't watch television, typical, trying to do damage control for this woman who's lost her child. And so then we find out that Jem actually, I don't want to say it's like a superhero, but she takes vengeance. So she goes and looks for this killer. And so she's basically this mass vigilante that goes out at night. She goes and finds him. And so what it is, there's kind of a side story where there's this big, like mob boss kind of thing. And the guy she finds that was the killer was somehow his blood was making this guy survive like a vampire. So she ends up killing him. And so now there's kind of that side story coming in. I think the first issue was kind of interesting. It didn't really bowl me over. I thought it was pretty decent. I think the big problem I had, it kind of ended very weirdly. It's like the first issue just stopped. Like it was a little strange the way, because usually it'll say to be continued or something like that. And I'm reading it, and then there's like a few extra pages that happen to be ads, but I'm like, okay, it kind of stopped, which was a little weird. Not fatal, but just a little odd. Like I said, it was okay. I think the story's pretty basic. You've kind of read it. I think that the big kind of somewhat flaw of it is that it didn't seem to really bring a lot of new to the story. I mean, it had all the the kind of setup that it needed, but it didn't, okay, there wasn't anything that surprised me. It's like, okay, she does this, she does this. It's all nice and everything, but there wasn't anything new about it. And I don't think it's terrible. I think it was just okay. And unfortunately, with especially like this week with so many books coming out, okay is not really going to cut it. Next up, we have The Human Target number 7, written by Tom King with artwork by Greg Smallwood. So we are now in the back half of the story. They took the first 6 issues came out, and then they took a break. There was a special that came out last month that had guest artists do individual stories. There was a Fire story, Booster Gold, and God, I can't remember the third one. But basically, it was more of like them kind of pre-story to this storyline. So Christopher Chance meets up with Fire. And so he's questioning her because it was somebody in the Justice League International that had access to this poison. So he's out with her. It's kind of like a little date, and so he quizzes her, and then he basically finds out that so they go out in the state. She ends up not being really happy because he starts really, goading her and everything, because he's really he has a chance. He thinks he's figured out that she might have done it. So anyways, so he does, and she gets pissed, but he gets her to the point that he needs to get her to. And then later on, Ice and Christopher meet with her, and she tells the story of like, yes, she got the poison, but she is not the one who poisoned Lex, or attempted to poison Lex Luthor, and it has poisoned Christopher Chance. But she did say who she gave the poison to. So I'm not going to spoil it here, but it's interesting. It's somebody he has already interviewed in the first 6 issues. So I think it's interesting because with 12 issues, we got 6 more issues to go. So I think this is really a good point to show that it's not really that the kind of the quote unquote murder mystery is not the end all be all thing. Like, we kind of, at this point, it looks like we may know who poisoned him, but really the question is going to be is why and how it all happened. That's really where the story is, and that's really been the story so far, especially with him interviewing the heroes. Once again, King is really, this is a really character-driven story, which he's really great at. I really love the way he does these stories. And Smallwood's art is just absolutely stunning. I mean, this is a gorgeous-looking book. This book is amazing looking. And like I said, it's a basic murder mystery, but there's so much character development and so much depth to it. It's really, I love this book. I really love this book. And if you're not reading it, here's a good chance. There's a hardcover collection that came out this week, collects the first 6 issues, and you can jump right into the 7th issue and get right on track with this story. This is really a great book. Next up, we have Ant-Man number 3, written by Al Ewing with artwork by Tom Riley. So we have basically it's all the Ant-Mans in different. They're all in this story, but in different ways. So this one starts off with second Eric O'Grady, who is there's 3 Ant-Mans going on in this issue. So we've got him, who is it starts off with him because he's looking for the Henry Pym that has been fused with Ultron, but he's dead. But well, he's not really dead. They're just keeping him suspended animation. So Tony Stark has created like this titanium coffin, and then Thor has put like a mystic Nordic thing on it to keep it sealed. And so Scott and Cassie Lang come in, and they're like, "Oh, we'll take care of this." And Tony's like, "I don't think so," but they get called away, and so Scott and Casey take off with it. They're like, "Oh, we'll take care of this," and then Second Eric O'Grady comes after them, and of course it doesn't turn out well. They do defeat him, but then it doesn't. And then basically Henry Ultron escapes, and that leads us up to the next issue, which I believe is the last issue. I think it's a 4-issue miniseries. So this, once again, it's kind of hard to keep track of. I don't even know that there was that many Ant-Mans, but I will say I do like. It's a little confusing only because I don't know who the Ant-Mans are, but it's not fatally confusing in the sense that I don't know what's going on. I just don't know the characters. The one good thing that Al Ewing is doing here is you may not know who all these like the Eric O'Grady, I have no idea who that one is. But it's okay because I don't really need to know him. I just know that he's kind of a bad guy. And Al Ewing does all this stuff to make sure that like at least what, like he's a bad guy, these guys are the good guys, it's just kind of a fun little book. I mean, it's getting kind of deeper with this issue. First issues were a little bit more looser and fun. I mean, there's still fun stuff, especially with Scott and Cassie. There's just, Scott is not, he's kind of worthless in some ways, but in a good way. And Tom Riley's artwork is really, really perfect. It's kind of a throwback to like a kind of like the old kind of Marvel, not style, but it kind of has that like 50s kind of look, comic book look to it, which is really perfect because that's the feel that they're trying to go for. It's a fun little book. I like I said, it really took a big turn this issue, but not in a bad way. So, but I still like it, and we'll see how it ends up. Next up, we have the Nice House on the Lake, number 10, written by James Tynion IV, with artwork by Alvarado Martinez Bueno. Now, this book has had some delays, and that's okay because, first of all, the book is that good. So we still have the 10 people that Walter has picked to stay in the house. So basically, we kind of know what they are, but now Walter breaks it down. So here are the 10 guests. There's an artist, a writer, an actor, historian, musician, mathematician, doctor, scientist, politician, and person of faith. So each one of those characters falls into that category, but there's actually 11 people there. So Nora is the 11th, and so Walter can get so basically he has been tasked with having these 10, basically saving these 10 people from society. And so Walter is talking to Nora because Nora is trying to kind of get to the bottom of what is going on. They kind of have some ideas with what has been leading into this issue, that they can't die, that there's always food there for them. They have the climate's always good, but they're like in a cage, so they're kind of getting a bit stir crazy. So we learn that every aspect of their existence in this bubble is controlled. So like you can turn a knob and like they age differently, or they could not, if they could have an accident, they could die. So while Nora's talking with Walter, the rest of the people, one of them just remembers that they have a gun, and of course they can't die. So one of them says, "Hey, let me shoot you, and let's see what it's like." So they start experimenting, and it's kind of sick, but like in a really amazing way. They start killing each other. They start shooting each other, and then they die, but then they really don't die. They come back to life. And so it's kind of like that, it's kind of like having an epiphany. It's almost like, if you go skydiving or something, because you're flirting with death, except for in this case, they can't die. They're flirting with death, and they die, but then they come back to life. So that, and I don't really want to say what happens at the end of this issue, but it really, with Walter and Nora and then the rest of them, there's a really big kind of like shocking ending that like, okay, now what happens? What has caused this to happen? And it's really a really big big change in the story. And of course, we're as we've learned along, this is really an amazing story, and I love how he's built all these things. So when you read this issue, even though there's been some gaps in time publishing, it's okay, because you do all this stuff, you do remember what has happened before. And it's the way he's building the story is absolutely amazing. And then to have Martinez Bueno's artwork this is a gorgeous looking book. And the way he the artwork's incredible. And it's one of those things Tynion's written a really great story, but it's the artwork that Bueno is doing with that story that is really just solidifying and making this a really great comic book. It still continues to be a must-read comic. I know at this point, if you haven't started, please I know there's going to be a collection. There is a collection, I think, of the first 6 issues, but just at this point, wait. But I'll tell you, if you've been waiting for this issue was so well worth the wait. It was fantastic. I just loved it. Next up, we have Grimm number 5, written by Stephanie Phillips with artwork by Flamingo. Now, just to let you know, this is apparently the end of the first story arc. Now, I would assume that means there might be a break before issue 6, but it does end. It doesn't really end the story. It just comes to kind of the end of the first act, I guess you could say. So we have that. Grim Adria is basically been she's like the head. She's like the head Grim Reaper. So she's been. So Jessica, basically, we find out in the last issue, a bit of a spoiler here. So if you haven't been reading, or you want to read it and you don't, just skip ahead, skip to the next one. The next one will be Detective, so just go there if you want to. So spoiler. That we find out that Jessica is actually the Grim Reaper's daughter. We also find out that the reason that she is kind of in between two worlds is that her mother was human. And so they went to Vegas last issue. They find the Grim Reaper. And then Adriana has sent this giant demon to go find Jessica and the other 2 Reapers. And so, but the thing is that the Grim Reaper has to stay in the penthouse. That's he's made the deal because Adriana is his sister. So he made a deal that she'll be the Grim Reaper and he'll let her do it. But she kind of breaks it when she goes after Jessica. So the Grim Reaper's screw you. I know this will kill me, but I'm gonna save my daughter. And so that's kind of where we end up at the end of this. And then there's an epilogue where we actually see her mom, but I will not reveal where and where her mom is. So that's a really neat twist. I'm really digging this book. It's really the way that Phillips has really built this story up through the issues has been really fantastic. And it really it ends on a nice cliffhanger for an end of this first story arc. And then Flavino's artwork is really, really nice. This has really been a big surprise book. So I'm really excited to kind of see where they take it. So if you've missed the book, I'm sure there's going to be a trade of these first 5 issues, probably within the next few months. So if you haven't picked it up, definitely pick that up because I know it's been a really hot seller. So, but definitely check it out. I've really enjoyed this book. Next up, we have Detective Comics number 1064 with the main story written by Ram V and artwork by Raphael Albuquerque. And then there's a Jim Gordon backup written by Simon Spur with artwork by Danny. So it's very interesting. I love the fact because Chip Zdarsky took over the regular Batman book, and I love the fact that both books are really different, and that has kind of been one of my gripes with Batman and Detective is that they were really kind of the same book. There wasn't a whole lot of difference between the two, and I like the fact that Zdarsky doing Batman is more of kind of an action, Batman superhero type book where Ram V is taking detective in more of the detective noir sort of mode. And I really like that. I like the fact that they're separate and they're doing their own thing. Because first of all, it seems like there's 800 Batman books. Let's just get that out of the way. But having two different books allows, especially Ram is really this. I mean, there's action in it, but there's so we know that Talia has been in town, but we don't know why, and we're still not quite sure. But we know that. So Batman is led to this like this warehouse or whatever where Talia is, and then we find out that the reason that she's kind of fighting him is to keep him away from the docks. Now there's this dignitary that's coming into the dock, and it looks like, I don't know if they're trying to kill him or whatever, but Bruce figures out that, hey, I'm being kept here for a reason to not be somewhere else. And so that's kind of where what happens in this issue. And it's like he's got to figure out what is really going on, that why is Talia here, not to fight with him, but what's the ulterior motive, what's going on. And that's what I've really liked about this story is and I've been a really big fan of Ram V, and he's doing very similar somewhat storyline that he did in Swamp Thing. This is the long game. It's really about, this story is a long, it's one big story, this first story arc that he's doing, and each issue is just like a chapter. So each issue kind of builds on the last issue. So we're like, oh, we learn a little more, and then some new questions come up. So I really like that. Now for some people that's a bit of a challenge on a monthly schedule, but I'm really digging the story that Ram's doing here. And then Albuquerque's artwork is just perfect. They're really, I really love him as artist, and he's able to capture that noir detective aspect of this story and just nailing it. And then the backup, the Jim Gordon backup by Spur and Danny has been really fun. This is the last chapter of that. So basically Jim has come across this kid who has no memory of who he is, and so he refers to him as JJ. And so it's kind of been this like mystery to find out about him, and yet there's this kind of possessed person that JJ helps him defeat. And it's really it's interesting because it kind of ends, but it really doesn't. So it's really more of a story about Gotham and how Jim is dealing with kind of the regular part of Gotham, and more of like a private detective type instead of like commissioner. So it's been a really interesting story, and I think it does end, but I think it also leaves like a lot of questions. Not that you don't understand the story, but there's questions of like, okay, is there going to be more of these type of stories that deals with this kind of regular area of Gotham, regular kind of like the streets stories of Gotham. So that'll be excuse me. I think that'll be interesting to see if that continues from this particular three issue or three part story. So that'll be kind of interesting. I'm really, like I said, I'm really digging detective, but like I said, a bit of warning. It's each month is like kind of a continuing chapter, so it's building, but it's kind of one of those slow builds where it'll slowly. There's a lot of things that Ram is doing with the story that is coming together, and you're seeing that, like, especially like in this issue. But there's still more to come. So, but I still recommend it. I still like the book. Next up, we have 8 Billion Genies number 5, written by Charles Sewell, with artwork by Ryan Brown. So this issue, we find out not really how the genies came to be, but we kind of learn where the first genie really showed up. So we have Floyd Fawn, who is the idea man in the present day, but it goes back 8 months. It goes back to his origin story, like 8 years in the past, how he ultimately, so he was just kind of a regular guy. He always had ideas. Nobody seemed to listen. So then one day, like the first time Genies pop up, he says, I want people to believe all of my ideas. That is his wish. So he becomes this idea man. And what we figure out that he has created like this city, this like bubble city that protects him, just like the bar, where no wishes are affected inside the bubble. So if you go in, nothing from the outside, like if you're dying, so no, if you've made like some sort of bad wish, it doesn't affect anything on the inside of the bubble, just like the bar. So we discover that so we have Robbie Green, who has become the superhero. He finds this place and he wants to bring his parents there, but the part of the problem is now that there have been so many screwed up wishes that the earth has been decimated. So basically, if you were not in the bubble or in the bar, you're gone. It's radioactive wasteland. So there's that. So the idea man has to come up with a way to fix that problem of kind of doing the recreating of Earth and bringing everything back to life. And so he has like these idea genies that basically write this this long way of making a wish to make sure that nothing is ultimately screwed up, because once again, it's be careful what you wish for, because like if you become like rich, there's consequences. It's the monkey paws. Be careful what you wish for. So there's that part of the story. So then we have the rest of the people at the bar. So Liffing is giving birth. She's been pregnant, and so she's giving birth. And so the birth ends up not going well, and she's bleeding out. So there's still a couple people that have not made wishes, and so they have to make a decision. Like, are you going to use your wish to save her and the baby? So there's that part of the story. So you kind of have these. The stories are separate, but they're definitely connected. So there's that. This has been really a wild book, and it's. I have to give Sewell that his way of telling this monkey paw story has been quite fascinating, because he really dwells into the be careful what you wish for part of it, because it really allows, there's consequences to it, and so wishes can be good, wishes can be not so good. So that's really interesting. And then we have Ryan Brown's artwork is really great. I love the artwork. This continues to be a really great book. I think Amazon picked it up, or Netflix. They're making it into a show. So it's really good. And I could see how it's going to make a really interesting show. Next up, we have Wonder Woman 791, written by Michael W. Conrad and Becky Cloonan, with artwork by Margaret Savage. So first and foremost, I know there's been a big rotation of artists, but I'm really glad that Savage is on her. I love her artwork. So we're kind of getting back to basics with this story with Diana. She ends up so her, Etta, Steve, and Ziggy, Siegfried, are kind of like this. Now they're kind of like this team. And so she finds out, because she goes back to Themyscira, she talks to her mother as a god, and so she finds out one of the Amazons there is having these visions, so Diana can see these visions. So she goes to Brazil, where there's like this this rare flower, and it's being kind of they're hurting them, or they're trying to get all these flowers for what purpose we don't know. And so when she goes there, she's trying to figure out why basically it looks like mercenaries are running this, why they want this flower. And so and of course Cheetah's on the cover, we don't see Cheetah till the end. She's in a cage, like they're doing experiments. Like, what are these experiments about? So that's really kind of set up for this storyline. I really like this. I like the fact that we're kind of getting back to basics with this kind of it's a real Diana story, Wonder Woman story. I really like it. Conrad included. This is one of the best issues I've read in quite a while, and it's not a knock against the book. Trust me, I know how hard it is to write Wonder Woman, because a lot of people have done it, and some have done it well, some have done it not so well. I think they're getting their footing back on it, which I'm really happy about. And like I said, Savage's artwork is it's a really great looking book. I hope she stays in the book for a little while. And then there's the Young Diana backup, which, once again, I'll say it, I really enjoy it, but it just does not fit with the main story. It just I really wish that they would put that out as like the Deadman book at the beginning. Just put it out as a kid's book, because that's really what it's aimed for. But I will say the main story, if you haven't been reading Wonder Woman, this is actually a good jumping on point for it. So definitely, I think Wonder Woman's a tough nut to crack. Not every story is going to be a winner, but I do like this current storyline. So if you're looking to kind of want to jump into Wonder Woman, I think this is a good one. And finally, yes, we're at the end. Sins of the Black Flamingo, number 4, written by Andrew Wheeler with artwork by Travis Moore. So we find out that Sebastian's been, he got kidnapped last issue. So Ezekiel the angel, and then we have Abel the golem. So what it is he's been kidnapped because the lady lady who kidnapped him needs Ezekiel. And we find out the reason he needs Ezekiel is that the bad guy. So we finally really learn who the bad guy is. It's Thorndike Scar, who has been basically, he's lived for thousands of years because he drinks Ezekiel's blood. That's why he wants Ezekiel. That's why Sebastian's been kidnapped to trade for Ezekiel. So they do the exchange. And then Thorndike comes in and takes Ezekiel, but also we have the love triangle between Ezekiel, Sebastian, and Abel. So Ophelia, who's a friend of Sebastian, she's pissed off at him because it's like, look, Golem brought you back to, Abel brought you back to life, and yet you kind of got the hots for Ezekiel. So you need to kind of get your crap together with this, because I know you love Ezekiel, but Abel loves you, and so there's the love triangle going on, and then we have like this crazy like madman who's drinking angel blood, who's been for thousands of years. So it's like, holy crap, this is like it was really nuts, this issue. And once again, the one thing I really appreciate about this book is it's a really good LGBTQ story, in the fact that it pulls no punches. It really but it that's a part of the story, but it's like, it's okay. It's okay that there's this love triangle. I think it's great that we're actually seeing a really well done story that happens to be about these gay Sebastian, this gay character. But yet that's not like it's not. I love the fact that Wheeler, it's not a big deal. It's perfectly, the thing that I love about it is just everything is perfectly normal. It's that he falls in love with this guy and this guy. That's perfectly fine. But I think there's also just the story beyond that is really just kind of neat. How it started off as him just as a thief, and then there's been all these things that have been built on top of this. That is really, I love all this mythology, the angel, the golem mythology that he's been bringing in. It is just really, it's been a really interesting story. So it'll be really interesting because the next issue is the last issue, kind of see where it all lands. And really for me, I love Travis Moore's artwork. He actually did a big story arc on Wonder Woman. That was kind of the first time I really discovered his artwork recently. And this is a great looking book. It really is nice, and I'm really happy it's out there, because I think definitely need more diverse books just like this out there that shows LGBTQ people in a good light. That's always a good thing. That's going to do it, folks. Oh, God, it's been a long one. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry, long-winded, but there were some big books that came out this week. I know the Deadman just really, it's a long one. But anyways, we'll do this quickly. Public service announcement. As always, I buy all my comics at Pulp Fiction Comics in Long Beach, California. Ryan Skinner runs a great store. Annie, Eduardo, Wendy, Derek. It's great. Great customers. Definitely check it out if you're in the area, if you live in the LA area. There's Pulp Fiction Culver City. They're the same name, but they're different owners. Chris owns that store. Great team. They both offer pull services discounts on new comics with the pull service, discounts on their trades and graphic novels. They're both really great stores. Of course, I have more fondness for Long Beach because that's my store. But definitely support your local comic shop. As always, that's very important. They're the backbone of the industry. And as always, we end our show with be kind to each other. It really, like I said, times are tough. I know it's crazy out there in lots of ways, but just be kind to each other, and take care of yourselves. Stay healthy, stay safe, and just take care of yourselves. We'll be back again next week. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Comments are always appreciated. Please subscribe. Please share with your friends. And hopefully you'll come back for more. And hopefully next week won't be as long. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself. This is Steven from Pop Culture Maven signing off. Take care. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.